You know, usually when we talk about a wedding, there's this expectation of just like absolute unblemished perfection.
Oh, yeah.
You
Completely.
picture it, right? The string quartet is playing softly in the corner. The floral arrangements are flawless.
Everyone's dressed perfectly.
Exactly. And the couple is staring deeply into each other's eyes, and everyone in the room is just, entirely swept up in this beautiful fairy tale romanticism.
It's the ultimate cultural fantasy. I
Yeah.
mean, we genuinely love the idea that love conquers all
Right.
and that finding the one, it just guarantees a lifetime of effortless cinematic bliss.
Yeah, we filter out all the noise,
Mhm.
but then you step out of the banquet hall and into the reality of long-term human relationships, and suddenly that fairy tale filter completely shatters.
It really does.
Because the landscape of actual marriage is, well, I mean, it's incredibly messy.
It is the absolute definition of messy human reality. The gap between like
Yeah.
the poetry of the wedding day and the prose of a Tuesday morning 10 years later is staggering.
It's massive. Which brings us to what we are looking at today for this deep dive. We are exploring a truly fascinating, highly unconventional book by the School of Life titled How to Get Married.
It's quite a read.
It is. And the mission of this deep dive is to sort of strip away that toxic fairy tale romanticism that actually sets us up for failure. We want to equip you, the listener, with the slightly dark but ultimately incredibly liberating psychological tools you need for real enduring love.
Yeah, that's exactly the goal.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because the central premise of this book, it hits like a ton of bricks.
It really does.
It argues that the whole point of marriage, the legal contracts, the expensive party, the whole public spectacle, is to function as a cumbersome, expensive, and legally terrifying prison.
Yeah. It sounds incredibly bleak when you phrase it that way.
It does. My immediate reaction as a listener, and I'm sure anyone tuning in feels exactly the same, is, wait, if it's a prison, why on earth would I volunteer to lock myself inside?
Right. It's a fair question, but there is profound psychological wisdom in making it exceptionally difficult to escape a relationship.
Okay.
To understand why we'd willingly hand over the keys, you really have to look at the psychology of impulse control. Think about the famous Stanford marshmallow test.
Oh, right. Where researchers put a marshmallow in front of a 3-year-old and tell him,
Yeah, if you can just sit here and wait 5 minutes without eating this, I'll give you two.
right, right.
And the children who couldn't resist the immediate, overwhelming impulse to eat that single marshmallow, they often went on to have lives that were profoundly blighted by a lack of long-term planning.
Wow. Just from that one test.
Yeah, they struggled because they couldn't delay gratification. Well, I mean, adults are not entirely
Well,
new.
no, we definitely aren't.
We are incredibly prone to abandoning long-term stability for short-term emotional impulses.
So, like, getting incredibly angry over a petty argument and wanting to just, pack a bag and storm out forever.
Exactly. Or getting a rush of validation from a new attractive person at the office who laughs at your jokes and suddenly you're questioning your entire life.
Yeah.
Marriage acts as a giant structural inhibitor for those moments. It protects us from our own temporary madness.
That makes a lot of sense.
In the heat of the moment, when you are looking around for the exit, you look at the door and realize it would cost an absolute fortune.
And require a phalanx of lawyers.
Exactly. And it would be completely humiliating to undo everything you promised in front of your grandmother.
It forces you to just sit back down and figure it out.
Yeah.
We're structurally saving ourselves from our own worst instincts.
Precisely.
But, if the goal is just to create a binding legal contract, that makes me question the actual event itself. Because in our daily lives, we've largely abandoned formal etiquette.
Yeah, we definitely have.
I mean, we went from wearing waistcoats in perfectly ordered dinner seating a century ago to wearing jeans and just texting people, hey, when we arrive. So why do we still insist on these bizarre, highly ritualistic, expensive ceremonies?
Well, because the gravity of the contract requires it. The book explains this necessity using two philosophical concepts. They talk about phenomenal time and noumenal time.
Okay, you're going to have to translate that for me.
I know, it sounds academic, but it's actually quite beautiful. Phenomenal time is the everyday, chaotic flux of life.
Okay.
It's the caterer dropping a tray of hors d'oeuvres in the kitchen. It's the fact that it started pouring rain at exactly 2:30 p.m. or the noise of a commercial flight passing overhead during the vows.
So it's just the messy, uncontrollable present.
Yes. But a wedding is attempting to bridge that everyday chaos with noumenal time.
And nominal time is what? Like the bigger picture?
It's the eternal, the transcendent, the unchanging.
Hmm.
The ceremony is a deliberate attempt to take two people out of the ordinary, fluctuating present and, anchor them to a commitment that is supposed to last until they are laid in the grave.
That is a surreal, almost impossible psychological leap.
It is. And you cannot make that leap in jeans over a casual lunch. We need strange clothes, antiquated words, and highly stylized movements to mark that we are stepping out of ordinary time and into something sacred.
And we need specific spaces for it, too. I remember the authors mentioned the architecture of temples, like the Maison Carrée in France, with its massive, imposing steps and columns.
Yes, or the crimson ropes at the high altar of St. Paul's Cathedral in London.
Exactly. You need a physical threshold to separate the sacred commitment from the busy, distracted public realm. It actually makes me think about how modern secularism handled this.
Oh, how so?
Well, it feels like a careless home renovation. Like, we tore down the walls of theology because we didn't believe in the dogma anymore, but we accidentally threw out the load-bearing beams of deeply necessary human ceremony.
That is a fantastic analogy.
Thanks. But we still need those thresholds, you know?
Yeah.
Even if we don't believe in the superstition.
That is exactly the challenge. Good secularization means stealing the ceremonial techniques of religion, the gravity, the thresholds, the community witness, while completely disregarding the theological content.
Okay, so if we've built this beautiful secular architecture and we step over the threshold to willingly lock ourselves in this protective prison, well, that brings up a really terrifying question.
Which is?
Who exactly did we just lock ourselves in with?
That is the crux of the matter. If you are entering a lockbox, you have to face the stark reality of who is in there with you.
Right.
And the answer is, frankly, a deeply, deeply flawed person, which means you can't just prepare for marriage by picking out floral arrangements and tasting cake.
You need, intense philosophical preparation for human imperfection.
Yes. The School of Life uses St. Augustine's concept of original sin, but they completely reframe it for modern psychology.
Wait, original sin. Calling my partner or myself fundamentally sinful or messed up sounds incredibly toxic. I mean, our whole cultural narrative right now tells us the goal is to go out and find the perfect match.
I know, and that cultural narrative is exactly why so many marriages fail.
Really?
Yes. If you expect perfection or expect to find your flawless soulmate, you will inevitably view every single flaw your partner exhibits as a personal betrayal.
Ah, I see.
Secular original sin is simply the baseline psychological assumption that we are all fundamentally messed up.
That's reassuring.
It is. We've all been inadequately parented in some way. We have terrible coping mechanisms. We have evolutionary wiring that just doesn't fit modern life. And we carry a host of hidden anxieties we are all deeply challenging to live with.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the book is arguing that realizing your partner is an absolute nightmare, and crucially, admitting that you were an absolute nightmare isn't a reason to break up.
No, not at all.
It's actually the only reliable baseline for actual harmony.
Precisely. Because it forces a shift in how you interpret their behavior. The crucial pivot the book advocates for is moving from an irate interpretation of your partner to a charitable interpretation.
Give me a tangible example of how that plays out on, a random Tuesday.
Okay, let's say your partner is incredibly messy and they leave their clothes all over the bedroom floor again.
A classic.
Right. The irate interpretation is that they are selfish, lazy, and willfully trying to disrespect you and the home you built together. You view it as malice.
Which just makes you furious.
Exactly. But the charitable interpretation requires stepping back and recognizing that maybe they grew up with a tyrannical, overcritical mother who demanded spotless perfection. And being disorganized is a lingering unconscious childhood defense mechanism.
Oh, wow. So it's a symptom of past anxiety, not a weapon aimed at you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're looking at them through a lens of compassion rather than prosecution. Love requires that charitable lens.
This shifts the dynamic entirely.
It does.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that this is deeply tied to what the authors call the weakness of strength. You cannot divorce your partner's annoying traits from the things you love about them. Let me give you a historical example the book brings up, which perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, please do.
It's about the American author Henry James and the great Russian novelist Ivan Turgenev. They were friends in Paris.
Okay.
Now, Turgenev's writing was phenomenal because it was completely, beautifully unhurried. He took his time, he polished every single sentence until it was a masterpiece.
So he's very methodical.
Very. But in his social life, this exact same trait made him utterly maddening to be around. He would RSVP to a dinner party, cancel, uncancel, and then show up 2 hours late, completely unbothered.
Oh, wow. So you literally couldn't have his literary genius without his infuriating inability to look at a clock.
Exactly. Turgenev's agonizing lateness wasn't a separate, isolated flaw you could just surgically remove. It was the exact same trait and unwillingness to be hurried that made him great.
That makes so much sense.
Every strength your partner has casts a shadow. If they are highly organized, hyper-competent, and keep the household running flawlessly, you cannot be shocked or angry when they are rigid and unspontaneous on a weekend getaway.
Right. You can't have the strength without the weakness.
You really can't.
Okay, I buy that in theory. We're both inherent nightmares, and every strength has a shadow. But when that charitable interpretation hits the cold, hard reality of the day-to-day grind.
Yeah, when you're tired.
Exactly. When they leave the dishes out for the fourth time or forget to pay a bill, it's incredibly hard to maintain. How does this philosophy suggest we handle the actual daily friction without just constantly hoping they'll eventually change?
By actively abandoning hope.
Wait, what?
The book argues that hoping for the best is actually incredibly dangerous for a relationship. Optimism makes us feel betrayed when things inevitably get hard. Pessimism, on the other hand, acts as a daily emotional inoculation.
But hold on, doesn't actively expecting the worst just make you a miserable, cynical person to be around? If I premeditate how my partner is going to fail me, won't I just create a self-fulfilling prophecy of misery?
It's not about being hostile, it's about not being blindsided. If you actively premeditate the worst-case scenarios, you remove the shock value when they happen.
Ah,
You can say, yes, here is that flaw we knew about, rather than, how could you do this to me? Take having children, for example, which is a massive stressor on a marriage.
oh, definitely.
The authors bring in the work of psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. Winnicott talked about the profound danger of trying to be a flawless, perfect parent.
Okay.
He found that parents who hated themselves for occasionally losing their temper or being tired were actually doing just fine. They were what he called good enough.
And the fascinating counterintuitive part of Winnicott's theory is that being a good enough parent, meaning you are occasionally tired, irate, and unfair, is actually vastly better for the child's development than being perfect.
Exactly. Because if you somehow manage to create a flawless, frictionless environment for a child, they are completely, hopelessly unprepared for the reality of the adult world.
Which is highly imperfect.
Yes, it's frequently unfair and deeply frustrating. By failing them in small, manageable ways, you are actively preparing them for reality.
That reframing is incredible. It takes the guilt completely out of the equation.
It really does.
And it extends directly to how we treat our partners. We have this cultural obsession right now with brutal honesty, this idea that true love means sharing every single critical thought that passes through your head, processing every minor annoyance to death.
It's exhausting.
It is. But the book champions the lost virtue of politeness. Sometimes repressing a thought, keeping a secret about how annoying you find them today, or heavily editing your responses is a profound act of love and loyalty.
It is keeping the machinery of the relationship running. Politeness is highly underrated. We've elevated romantic motives like they understand my soul, or we like the exact same indie movies, and we degrade pragmatic motives as if they are somehow dirty or unromantic.
Right, which brings us to the logistics of living together. A marriage is a deeply practical project. It is essentially akin to running a small business together. You are dealing with property law, complex logistics, catering, scheduling, and managing a shared budget.
It is entirely a small business, and yet we hire our partner based on poetry.
It's exactly like hiring a co-founder for a complex startup, just because they have nice eyes and like the same music as you, even though they can't balance a spreadsheet to save their life.
Yeah, you would never, ever do that in business.
Never. But we do it in marriage all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do you value your partner's deep, poetic soul, but completely dismiss their utter inability to administer a shared bank account?
And then we act shocked when the business struggles to keep the lights on.
Exactly.
A sound, enduring marriage requires blending romantic and pragmatic sympathies. Agreeing on how a kitchen should be organized or having a unified approach to how finances are handled can absolutely sustain a couple through those inevitable multi-year periods where the emotional or physical connection is faltering.
Okay, so if this is the reality, If marriage is essentially a small business run by two deeply flawed people who need structural barriers to keep them from running away, how do you actually design a wedding ceremony that honors that truth?
Right.
Because walking down the aisle to a string quartet while holding expensive flowers feels like massive false advertising at this point.
What's fascinating here is how the School of Life proposes a complete ground-up redesign of the ceremony to reflect this reality. And it starts long before the wedding day with what they call a 6-clause emotional prenup.
Emotional prenup.
Yeah. Traditional prenups deal with dividing assets when a marriage fails. This emotional prenup is signed to prevent the marriage from failing in the first place by setting radically realistic expectations.
I was reading through these clauses, and they are brilliant.
Aren't they?
Clause 1, I will give up on perfection.
Mm.
Clause 3, I recognize that I am crazy. Clause 5, I am ready for administration. You are sitting down and literally signing a document admitting you are difficult to live with.
And officially accepting that love is going to involve a massive amount of unglamorous chores. It grounds the couple immediately.
What?
And then the new rituals they suggest for the actual ceremony itself are wild. It's so incredibly thoughtful. Instead of just exchanging vows claiming you will be perfect forever, the couple creates a book of imperfections.
Okay, what is that?
In the months leading up to the wedding, each person writes down a candid, heavily audited list of their darkest sides, their failures of patience, their bad habits, their irrational grudges.
And during the ceremony, they literally read from this beautifully bound book to the audience.
Yes.
They stand up in front of everyone and publicly admit their brokenness. And then there's the ritual. I absolutely love the exchange of childhood photos. You hand your partner a photo of yourself as a 3 or 4-year-old.
A psychological mechanism there is incredibly powerful. It's designed to permanently invoke that charitable, forgiving lens we naturally apply to toddlers.
Right, because when a toddler is screaming in a supermarket, you don't think they are inherently evil or malicious.
No, you think they are exhausted, overwhelmed, or hungry. The ceremony physically forces you to look at your adult partner and remember that they are still somewhere deep inside that same vulnerable, easily overwhelmed kid.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
But then the book also talks about the guest list, and this part I genuinely struggled with. They suggest actively intimidating people to your wedding.
Yes.
Like, why would I want my boss or my grumpy, highly judgmental aunt sitting in the front row staring at me?
Because you want to maximize the social friction of ever getting a divorce.
Oh.
The book insists that the ceremony shouldn't just be a fun party, it should be slightly terrifying. The larger and more intimidating the crowd, the slower you will be to pick up the phone to a divorce lawyer after a bad fight.
Because you will dread having to explain your failure to that judgmental aunt.
Exactly.
Okay, that actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Use the social pressure to fortify the prison walls.
Right.
And the person officiating, the director, as they call them, shouldn't be a cheery MC making lighthearted jokes. The book says they should act with the somber gravity of a radiologist delivering a tough but treatable diagnosis.
I love that comparison.
Right. They know the treatment is going to be painful. They know there will be incredibly dark nights ahead, but they believe the cure is ultimately worth it.
Yes, and part of that cure is what the authors call the art of reenchantment. During the ceremony, there is a designated moment where the couple just holds hands and the director instructs them to actively reenchant the familiar, ordinary body of their partner.
I love how they connect this to the art world. Think of the 18th century painter Jean-Baptiste Simeon Chardin.
Yes, great example.
He didn't paint grand, sweeping historical battles or royalty. He painted ordinary, mundane teacups, loaves of bread, and fruit. But he painted them with such reverence that he forced the viewer to see the magic in everyday objects.
Or John Constable, who painted ignored, gray, rainy clouds until people finally realized how deeply poetic they were.
Right. The ceremony is asking you to be an artist of your own life, to constantly refocus and appreciate the ordinary, highly familiar traits of your partner that you've started to take for granted or just ignore.
Because the ceremony eventually ends, the guests go home, the flowers die, and that radical realism has to carry over into the honeymoon phase and the decades that follow.
So how do they handle the reception?
Well, the book outlines a reception that completely shatters the usual polite small talk. Guests are given conversation menus at their tables, prompting them to discuss the trickiest relationships they've ever had, or what they genuinely fear about the concept of marriage.
Wow. And the presents. Guests are instructed to accompany their blenders and toasters with handwritten letters detailing their own marital miseries and lowest points.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, opening a toaster and finding a letter from your aunt saying she didn't speak to her husband for 2 months, it sounds deeply depressing as a wedding gift.
It sounds depressing when you're eating cake, but think about 5 years later. When you hit a massive crisis in your marriage, reading a letter from your seemingly perfect aunt admitting they nearly broke up is a massive comfort.
It's not depressing.
No, it's a lifeline. It normalizes the struggle and reminds you that you aren't uniquely cursed.
You're right. It proves that survival is possible. And this radical honesty extends to the wedding night, too. The book actively dismantles the immense cultural pressure of having heroic sex on your wedding night.
Thank goodness.
Right. Instead of expecting spontaneous acrobatic perfection after an exhausting 14-hour day of socializing, the couple makes specific vows acknowledging reality.
They vow that sex will inevitably decline over the years, that future children will absolutely ruin the mood, that they will frequently have mismatched desires. And crucially, they promise to forgive each other for these inevitable letdowns.
By explicitly removing the pressure for perfection, they actually create a much safer, more relaxed space for whatever intimacy they can muster.
Exactly. It's all about managing expectations visually, too. They suggest the wedding album shouldn't just be a highlight reel of glamorous shots.
Right. It's called the Honest Photo Album.
Yes. It should include photos of the messy sink in your apartment from your miserable single days to vividly remind you why you didn't want to stay alone.
And it should include photos of your partner's overbearing mother who shaped all their anxieties, and even photos of other couples you know who are in distress.
The album acts as a gritty emotional resource for future crises. And when those crises do inevitably hit, the book positions therapy not as a white flag of defeat, but as basic preventative maintenance.
Just part of the process.
Therapy is the single greatest tool for a good marriage. It provides a safe diplomatic back channel where a neutral third party can translate your partner's hostile silence into the pain and fear it actually represents. It prevents resentment from calcifying into hatred.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? When you take all of this in the admission of our own craziness, the strategic pessimism, the embracing of chores, the total dismantling of the fairy tale, it sounds aggressively anti-romantic at first.
It really does.
But this intense dose of realism is actually the most romantic thing you can possibly do, because it's the only way to ensure the relationship actually survives reality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this philosophy is showing us that true love isn't found in the absence of conflict. It's found in the mutual, premeditated agreement to interpret that conflict charitably.
Beautifully said.
The ultimate goal of this entire shift in perspective is to transition us from the childlike, passive demand to be loved to the mature, parent-like capacity to be loving. It's about accepting the heavy burden of love, rather than just demanding the warm feeling of it.
And if we radically applied this school of life philosophy to our marriages, what would happen if we applied it to our friendships or our careers?
Oh, that's a great question.
Imagine the profound peace we'd find if we signed an emotional prenup with ourselves, admitting our own craziness, embracing our mundane administrative burdens, and officially giving up the toxic pursuit of a flawless life. Think about that the next time you're frustrated by an ordinary Tuesday. You aren't failing at life, you're just experiencing the messy, beautiful reality of the human condition. Don't go searching for a new marshmallow. Stay right where you are and re-enchant the teacup.